sing a happy song together, and we'll all be a happy family.
Hi, welcome back to the channel. So we're back at this little monitor that I made up and put into this little case. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is that my videos are not tutorials. Don't do what I do. This is just a video showing what I've done and maybe of interest or entertainment. But if you were to buy one of these and have a go at getting it going for yourself, the first thing I'm going to say is you do that at your own risk and don't take my videos as instructional tutorial. Now, having said that, I want to emphasize also the safety side of this. This thing runs on 12 volts. But here there is a flyback transformer, and there is a lead which comes out of this and leads up to the CRT. And on that lead there can be, I don't know exactly, but I think about 5,000 volts. So bear in mind that there are lethal voltages in these when they're running. Now, with any voltage that high, there's got to be safety risks, and you really need to be aware of that. And I would say if you're not sure, then don't do this if you're not sure, because there are dangerous voltages around. The fact that it runs on 12 volts make me think a lot of people might think that it's completely safe, and it's not. Right, having said that, let's go through some of the things that have come up that other people have noticed. Now, when you look at this one, this is mine. The layout, this matches my layout of my own one, which is covered up at the moment, but we'll come on to that in a minute. Now, they're not all laid out the same. So if you get one of these, you may find the component layout doesn't match this, perhaps the wiring doesn't match this. There are several different versions. They all seem to be about the same sort of size. So that's a good reason for saying, for one thing, don't copy this. Yours may not be the same. Now with mine, we have these connections here, and mine did come with a short length of wires on here. This diagram for mine is correct. The diagram is correct. When mine came, the black and red wires leading to the 12 volt input were the wrong way round. So if I get something to point with, if you look at this, here it says 12 to 15 volts power red, ground black. On mine, these two were swapped. Not these two, these were correct as it arrived. Except the yellow was another red wire, not yellow. So you have to be careful. All these things may not be exactly as the diagram, and they may be wrong. Mine, these two were swapped, and I actually got the little plug here and pushed the pins back out through so that I could swap these two wires, so that mine now matches this diagram. So mine was incorrect, and if I just connected without looking the black to negative and the red to positive on my supply, I would have applied the wrong polarity to this unit. Fortunately, I spotted the error, not my error, but somebody when they wired this plug, and corrected it. So that's the first thing. Now, another thing with these is this is a module which was supplied as a replacement. So I've been able to find out that they were used in door phones. I showed that on one of my videos. Somebody else's video showed the door phone that these go into, and which is why a lot of these come without components. They come without trimmer pots here for the brightness and contrast. Mine did actually come with plug and short leads with 2 trim pots on the end. But this was a 4-pin connector, not a 5-pin, and it was sort of jammed in there. So I don't know why that was. And I've removed this altogether and put trim pots soldered onto the board in there instead. So that's another thing. So these components are on another board. There's no audio with this because the audio was part of the door phone system that this fitted in. So it's necessary to set up some sort of audio system to go with it if you want to use this as a complete monitor. Now, the other thing, mine contains modifications which I'll show in a minute, which were not mentioned in my videos and might have been briefly alluded to. I've done a couple of modifications to it as well as correcting the wiring fault down there. Now the reason for one thing is I wanted to protect myself from applying reverse voltage accidentally to it. So I introduced a diode, and I'll show that in a minute. And the other one is that this was never designed to be on for long periods of time. It was used in a door phone, so it would have only been on for 2 or 3 minutes normally at most, probably. Maybe a little bit longer, but not for sitting down and watching a movie. So that meant that there was a heat sink on here. It's just this little piece of metal strip down here. There's a heat sink for this chip, which is a 10-volt regulator chip. So I put my meter on and measured. The middle pin on mine is the ground, and I measured the voltage in and the voltage out. So the applied 12 volts or whatever voltage you're using is dropped to 10 volts here, and there's about 300 milliamps, so it's a fair wattage of heat coming off of this. And this tiny thin strip of aluminium it's attached to got quite hot. So when it had been on for some time, you could barely touch it. So I thought, well, I'm not happy with that. I don't like things getting that hot. There's always heat stress which wears components out. So I modified mine to have a larger heat sink on this chip so that it would dissipate the heat more effectively. So that's 2 modifications. One to stop me accidentally applying reverse polarity, and the other to increase the heat sink capacity on that chip. Now, the other thing about adding the diode is it drops half a volt, so that's half a volt got rid of before it even gets to here. That all helps to control the heat problem there. Right, so I have all the leads in there to go for the video and to go to the power supply. Now on my power supply I've got 2 of these plugs. One's marked red and one's marked black, but you can hardly see that really. And I knew very well that I could easily just shove those in the power supply the wrong way round once, and that would be a problem. So I figured, yes, I'll add the diode. So none of this is actually fixed in this case, it just rests in there. And this board just comes off, and then I mounted everything on this other board, on the piece of card, which is a kind of thick board from the bottom of drawers out of old furniture, but it was ideal for this because it's firm enough to hold the thing together. So first modification is this heat sink. So what I've done is I've taken the original strip of metal, flattened out the piece that goes onto here, and cut a hole in the bottom of the plastic of this surround so that this tag, this long metal aluminium tag that you can't see now because it's between the black and this, was screwed to this on the outside, mounted on the outside, and the tab went through and then I remounted this using some thermal compound and made a good thermal contact of this strip to this, and this does effectively get rid of the heat, and it gets warm, but it's reasonable. So that was one modification, and then the second modification, a diode. There's a diode mounted vertically here. That diode is just in the DC voltage line coming from the power supply. It comes onto this board. I've cut for a track the other side so I could fit a diode in there. So if I ever did apply the power the wrong way round, the diode would block it and nothing would happen. So that was that. I think that pretty much covers it, really. The things that I've altered on this. I didn't just go straight away and use it. I added, as I say, my audio system here, which is a separate thing, and you could just feed your audio signal into some other amplifier, really, in speakers if you wanted. Now, the high voltage side of it, this here is a flyback transformer, and it's worth reading up on that, really, and how these work. I won't go into it now, but effectively this generates a very high voltage, I think about 5 kilovolts. So bear in mind, this is a cathode ray tube. There are high voltages around. There is a vacuum in there. I don't think there's much danger of implosion, but it's always a possibility with a cathode ray tube. It's nice to have a tiny one to work on. But yeah, there's 5,000 volts kicking around here on this. Now it's insulated. As long as this insulation is in good condition, there's a connector onto the tube, but you need to keep well away from actually touching these. Now these trim pots, of course, are right next to that, but you just need to be aware, really, that this is dangerous stuff, and if you don't know what you're doing, you do it at your own risk. So really, that's it. There's the things. First of all, incorrectly wired. The connector here was incorrectly wired when I received it, and I had to swap the supplying black and red wires round to get the correct polarity on there. And I spotted it before I applied power. Then I've added the trim pots there, and I've added a diode here in line with the power, so I can't apply reverse voltage by accident. I've added a much bigger heatsink for this chip as a protection against failure due to the heat stresses. And that, apart from the audio side of it, really covers some of the things that it might be helpful to know. But I can't really advise on individual ones because, for one thing, you may have got one that looks similar to this, but it could be different. I know there are some kicking around that are totally different. I know mine had a wiring error on the connector. Some come with the trim pots on a short lead like mine did. Some don't. Some just come with a connector there with nothing going into it. If you apply power to it without anything connected there, it won't work. So you do need the trim pots in. It's ideal to have the video input connected to something, even if it's not switched on. I find it doesn't really like just having nothing connected to the video input, but it will still come up with something. But the essential thing to bear in mind, and I'll end on, is be aware of the high voltages around, and anyone who experiences one of these does so at their own risk. My video is purely for entertainment, and I hope that at least is interesting for some people, and so I'll leave it at that point and say thanks for watching, and catch me in the next one. Bye for now.
Sing a happy song together, fill the air with harmony. Sing a happy song together, that's the song to choose. For pushing away the blues, keep the heartstrings throbbing, there's a good time coming. It will